Sri Krishna Parabrahmane Namaha. Today I am going to discuss the topic spiritual realization and nature after the prayer. Vyasam vasishtanaptaram shaktehe pautram parasharatmajam vande shukatatam taponithim. Birth in the forests. The civilization of ancient Greece was nurtured within the city walls. In fact, all the modern civilizations have their cradles of brick and mortar. These walls leave their mark deep in the minds of men. They set up a principle of divide and rule in our mental outlook, which begets in us a habit of securing all our conquests by fortifying them and separating them from one another. We divided the nation and nation, knowledge and knowledge, man and nature. It breeds in us a strong suspicion of whatever is beyond the barriers we have built, and everything has to fight and for its entrance into our recognition. When the first Aryan invaders appeared in India, it was a vast land of forests, and the newcomers rapidly took advantage of them. These forests afforded them shelter from the fears that of the sun and the ravages of tropical storms, pastures for cattle, fuel for sacrificial fire, and materials for building cottages. And the different Aryan clans with their patriarchal heads settled in the different forest tracts, which had some special advantage of natural protection and food and water in plenty. Thus, in India, it was in the forest that our civilization had its birth, and it took a distinct character from this origin and environment. It was surrounded by the vast life of nature, was fed and clothed by her, and had the closest and most constant intercourse with her varying aspects. Now, aim to realize the all-comprehensive consciousness. See in detail. Such a life, it may be thought, tends to have the effect of dulling human intelligence and dwarfing the incentives to progress by lowering the standards of existence. But in ancient India, we find that the circumstances of forest or a life did not overcome man's mind and did not enfeeble that current of his energies, but only gave to it a particular direction. Having been in constant contact with the living growth of nature, his mind was free from the desire to extend his dominion by erecting boundary walls around his acquisitions. His aim was not to acquire but to realize, to enlarge his consciousness by growing with and growing into his surroundings. He felt that truth is all comprehensive, that there is no such things as absolute isolation in existence, and the only way of attaining truth is through the interpenetration of our being into all objects. To realize this great harmony between man's spirit and the spirit of the world was the endeavor of the forest dwelling sages of ancient India. Now, eternal source of inspiration. In later days, there came a time when these primeval forests gave way to cultivated fields and wealthy cities sprang up on all sides. Mighty kingdoms were established which had communications with all the great powers of the world. But even in the heyday of its material prosperity, the heart of India ever looked back with adoration upon the early ideal of strenuous self realization and the dignity of the simple, and drew its best inspiration from them, wisdom stored them. Next, harmony between the individuals and the universal. The West seems to take a pride in thinking that it is a subduing nature, as if we are living in a hostile world where we have to wrest everything we want from an unwilling and alien arrangement of things. This sentiment is the product of the city wall habit and training of mind. For in the city life, man naturally directs the concentrated light of his mental vision upon his own life and works, and this creates an artificial disassociation between himself and the universal nature within whose bosom he lies. But in India, the point of view was different. It included the world with the man as one great truth. India put all her emphasis on the harmony that exists between the individual and the universal. Next, everything had a spiritual meaning. The answer will be like this. With meditation and service, with a regulation of her lips, she cultivated her consciousness in such a way that everything had a spiritual meaning to her. That water and light, fruits and flowers, to her were not merely physical phenomena to be turned to use and then left aside. They were necessary to her in order the attainment of her ideal of perfection as every note is necessary to the completeness of the symphony. India intuitively felt that the essential fact of the world has a vital meaning or vital meaning for us. We have to be fully alive to it and establish a conscious relation with it, not merely impelled by scientific curiosity or greed of material advantage, but realize it in the sphere of sympathy with a large feeling of joy and peace, kinship with the world. How? The man who has his spiritual eyes open knows that the ultimate truth about earth and water lies in our apprehension of the eternal will, which works in time and takes shape in the forces we realize under those aspects. This is not mere knowledge, as science is, but it is a perception of the soul by the soul. This does not lead us to power, as knowledge does not, but it gives us joy, which is the product of the union of kindred things. The man whose acquaintance with the world does not lead him deeper than science leads him will never understand what is his the man with the spiritual vision finds. If he does not merely hold his body, but it is gladdens his mind, for its a contact is more than a physical contact. It is very living presence. When a man does not realize his kinship with the world, he lives in a prison house whose walls are alien to him. When he meets the eternal spirit in all objects, then he is emancipated. For them, he discovers the fullest significance of the world into which he is born. Then he finds himself in perfect truth and is honest harmony with the all he is established. Next, Gayatri, the unity of the world with the soul. Thus, the next of our everyday meditation is the Gayatri, a verse which is considered to be the epitome of all the Shivas or all the Vedas. But its help we try to realize the essential unity of the world with the conscious knowl of a man. We learn to perceive the unity held together by the one eternal spirit, whose power creates the earth, the sky, and the stars, and at the same time irradiation our minds with the light of the consciousness that moves and exists in unbroken continuity with the outer world. Next, pilgrimage in nature. It is not true that India has tried to ignore differences, value in different things, for she knows that would make life impossible. The sense of the superiority of man in the soul of creation has not been absent from her mind. But she has had her own idea as to that in which his superior really consists. It is not in the power of possession, but in the power of union. Therefore, India chose her places of pilgrimage wherever there was in nature some special grandeur or beauty, so that her mind could come out of its world of narrow necessities and realize its place in the infinite. Next, a man must realize the wholeness of his existence. India knew that when by physical and mental barriers we violently detach ourselves from the inaccessible life of nature. Not a man in the universe. We create a bewildering problems and having shut off the source of their solution. We try all kinds of artificial method, each of which brings its own crop of interminable difficulties. When man leaves his resting place in universal nature, when he walks on the single rope of humanity, it means either a dance or a fall for him. He has ceaselessly to strain every nerve and muscle to keep his balance at each step, and then in the intervals of his weariness, his fulfillment against providence, and feels a secret pride and satisfaction in thinking that he has been the unfairly dealt with by its wholesale scheme of things. But this cannot go on forever. Man must realize the wholeness of his existence, his place in the infinity. He must know that hard as he may strive, he can never be creative his honey within the cells of his hive, for the perennial supply of his life food is outside their walls. Next, a sublime achievement. The ancient civilization of India had its own ideal of perfection towards which its efforts were directed. Its aim was not attaining power, aim was not attaining the power, and it is neglected attaining a power to the utmost its capacities, and to organize men for defensive and offensive purposes, for cooperation in the acquisition of wealth, and for military and political ascendancy. The ideal that India tried to realize led her best men to the isolation of a contemplative life. and the treasures that she gained for mankind by penetrating into the mysteries of reality cost her dear in the sphere of worldly success. Yet, this was also a parasitical, sublime achievement. It was a supreme manifestation of that human aspiration which knows no limit and which has for its object nothing else or nothing less have been the realization of the infinite. There were at the virtuous, the wise, the courageous, there were the statesmen, kings, and emperors of India. But whom amongst all these classes did she look up to and enhance or choose to be the representative of man? Rishis, the ideal. They were the rishis, they who, having attained the supreme soul is knowledge, were filled with wisdom, and having food him in union with the soul, were in the perfect harmony with the inner self. They, having realized him in the heart, were free from all sides and selfish desires, and having experienced him in all the activities of the world, had attained calmness. The rishis were they who, having reached the supreme God, from all the sides has found abiding peace, had become united with all, had eternal into the life of the universe. Next, power of comprehension. Let us see. Man can destroy and plunder, earn and accumulate immense and discover, but he is great because his soul comprehends all. It is dire destruction for him when he envelops his soul in a dead shell of cellulose. All these classes she took as a habit, and when a blind fury of worlds whirls around him like an eddying dust storm, shutting out the horizon, that indeed kills the very spirit of his being, which is spirit of comprehension. Essentially, man is not a slave, either of himself nor of the world, but he has a lover. His freedom and self fulfillment is in love, which is another name for perfect comprehension. On this permeation of his being, he is united with the all pervading Spirit, who is also the breath of his soul. Next, everything is enveloped by God. See how we are enjoined to see whatever there is in the city as being enveloped by God. That's it. I bow to God over again, who is in fire and in water, who permeates the whole world, who is in the annual crops as well as in the perennial tree. Can this be God abstracts from the world? Instead, it signifies not merely shocking him in all the things, but saluting him in all the objects of the world. The attitude of the true God consciousness man of the Upanishads towards the universe is one of the deep falling feeling of adoration. Object of worship is present, everywhere. It is one living truth, but makes all realities true. This truth is not only a knowledge, but of devotion. Namo Namaha. We bow to him everywhere and over again. It is recognized in the outburst of the rishis who addresses the whole world in a sudden ecstasy of joy. Listen to me, yeah, sons of immortal spirit. Yeah, we have lived in the heavenly abode. I have known the Supreme Person whose light shone for the old directions beyond the darkness, extending the scope of consciousness and true progress. What is that spirit? The Upanishad says, the being who is in his essence the light of all, who is world conscious, is Brahma. To feel all, to be conscious of everything is his spirit. We are immersed in his consciousness, body and soul. It is through this consciousness that the sun attracts the earth. It is through his consciousness that the light waves are being transmitted from planet to planets. Not only in space, but the light and life, this all-feeling being is in our souls. He is all conscious in space, or the world of extension, and he is all conscious soul, or the world of intention. Thus, to attain our world consciousness, we have to unite our feeling with this all-pervasive, infinite feeling. In fact, the only true human progress is coincident with this widening of the range of feeling. All our poetry, philosophy, science, art, and religion are serving to extend the scope of our consciousness towards higher and higher, larger spheres. Man does not acquire rights through occupation or larger space, nor through external contacts. But his rights extend only so far as he is real, and his reality is measured by the scope of his consciousness. Next, a noble heritage waiting to be claimed. It fills me the great joy and high hope for the future of humanity when I realized that there was a time in remote past when our prophets stood under the lavish sunshine of Indian sky and greeted the world with the glad recognition of kindred. It was not an anthropomorphic hallucination. It was not seeing man reflected everywhere in grotesque by exaggerated images and witnessing the human drama acted on a gigantic scale in nature's arena of fleeting lights and shadows. On the contrary, it meant crossing the limiting barriers of the individual to become more than man, to become one with the all. It was not a mere play of the imagination, but it was the liberation of consciousness from all the mystifications and exaggerations of the self. These ancient seeds felt in the serene depth of their mind that the same energy which vibrates and passes into the endless forms of the world manifests itself in our inner being as a consciousness, and there is no break in unity. This is noble heritage from our forefathers waiting to be claimed by us as our own. This ideal of the supreme freedom of consciousness. Shri Kantai Kalyana Nidhe Nidhedram Shri Venkatanivasaయ Srinivasaya Mangalam Mangala Sasana Premtacharya Prome Sarvescha Purvera Acharya Satkritaya Astu Mangalam.